Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Block presented by Around the Block Sports Network. Got a quick and short episode for you guys here today. Even though there are a lot of topics to go through, we just got to get out of here real quick, but we'll make it meaningful. So, we're going to start off with hockey as we always do. And Sam, good to see you, buddy. Good to see that you're doing okay after going through the hurricane there. You ready to talk some hockey?
Matt, tough week for me for sure, but we finally have actual hockey to talk about, and that is a good thing.
That's all you could ask for. I mean, finally the season's back. Even though we don't have the regular season in the United States underway, we had some games happen over the weekend globally, and that was between the Predators and the Sharks, and just some really interesting games. And just wanted to get your perspective on it, so I'll let you go for it.
Yeah, first off, little side tangent. The NHL scheduling regular season games in the middle of the preseason is nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense to me. There's preseason games going on at the same time, and we have actual meaningful hockey. Anyways, stupid, but what are we gonna do? That's hockey for you. But these games were actually really, really interesting. I didn't think to expect much from this. I had pretty low expectations going in, considering the Sharks were not a team I had highly on my radar. But overall, it was a pretty exciting game. Predators did win both of them, and I think they were clearly the better team throughout the series. But I think that these games were exciting, and there's a lot to glean from them.
Yeah, and I think they really had a decent matchup between these two teams for being the overseas series to start off the regular season in the sense of, yeah, San Jose not really huge on everybody's board going into the season, but also the Predators, I mean, kind of some unknown. They made some really good moves in the offseason, but really just unknown of what kind of season they're going to have, after everything that has been going on with them the past couple seasons. And I think really, if you look at these two games, obviously the Predators won both. I For me, it's the people that the Predators brought in, and I think they did a good job this offseason. And just from the first two games, it has shown. You look at the defenseman, Ryan Mcdonough, obviously a huge piece, well-known player in the NHL, signed with the Predators, and he's already got 2 assists in 2 games. And then also, I mean, Niederreiter, I mean, a really good piece coming over from Carolina, I believe. He has been spectacular. Already has 3 goals to start the season. But I mean, there's so much to look at on these two teams from young guys to older guys. And realistically, both really impressed me at the end of the day. I just like that these older guys for this Predators team really started to benefit.
Yeah, when they got those guys in the offseason, Niederreiter and McDonough specifically, we definitely knew what they were getting. Those were two veteran players that have been around the league a long while. They're battle tested, they're proven, and they're good, solid players. And they showed it in this series, these couple games, what they're going to add. And that's stout defense from McDonough, good playmaking from McDonough, and good goal scoring from Niederreiter, good depth, middle, six scoring. What surprised me the most, I think, was Kevin Lankinen, the backup goalie they got in the offseason. Lankinen a couple years ago during the bubble season was a sensation for Chicago. If you remember, he had this great start. People thought he was the goalie of the future, and he kind of flamed out. It happens sometimes with goalies, especially young goalies, with bad systems around them, like Chicago has been. But in that game, I think the second game, San Jose might have even outplayed the Predators. The shots were 33-18 for San Jose, and Lankinen saved them. I mean, he stood on his head in that game to steal that game 3-2. And for me, this is just really, really exciting for the Predators because now they have 3 goaltenders, the UC Saros and their prospect from Russia coming up that could be genuine one goalies. So for me, if they're going to be a contender this season, it's going to be on the back of their goaltending, which looks incredibly strong.
Yeah, I agree with you because you got to remember at the end of the day, most Preds fans were worried once Pekka Rinne left there and ultimately left the game who was going to be the replacement. And obviously, we've seen a couple guys start off to have a potential to be a one, but now you have another guy right there in your depth chart. That's great for an organization that's kind of in not a rebuilding process, but just a sustaining process. And I think they're doing a really good job of that so far. And as for the Sharks, I still think Yes, the first couple games, not great. Obviously, I don't think this is going to be a really good season for them, but this is hopeful because, I mean, it shows that they've played really well. Yes, they outplayed the Preds in some of the periods through these first two games, ultimately could not get the job done. And that's huge in the sense of evaluating your players. But it's early. Obviously, they'll come back home, start playing on their home rink and just in rinks they've played in for these players that are used to at least compared to going overseas. But I think it's a pretty decent way to start off the NHL season, especially if we're trying to do this global outlook. And I think the first two games were really good for the fans as well.
Yeah, and with the Sharks, I've been pretty strong in my opinion that they need to pick a direction. You can't have these bottoming out type talents, but then also have solid guys like Couture and Hurdle and Meyer who are out playing where they need to
Yeah,
be. It's just not a recipe for success. We saw in this game there's talent, but just not a cohesive unit. As for Nashville, I mean, I was worried about them going into this offseason because I thought they were kind of a team stuck in the middle. The direction forward for them is clear, right?
yes.
They signed some great veterans or traded for in Mcdonough's case. And then their young guys, Tolvanen and Cody Glass, played excellent, excellent hockey. So if they want to step up, want to be in serious cup contention, now they have Saros, Lankinen, and Askarov coming up in nets in the next couple years. And then they also have Tolvanen and Glass as young guys who haven't worked out so far, but have this great draft pedigree that they definitely could in the near future.
Yeah, I completely agree. And really quick, going back to the Sharks, I think this is a season where you're going to look at your star older players. You're going to want to keep track of what they're doing in the sense of what you can get for them for trade value. Because I think a lot of these guys will be moved when the trade deadline is upon us. Obviously, we have a long way to go. But right now, I don't see any form of the Sharks making a run for a playoff spot or, just trying to sustain this group. I think we'll be seeing a clean house relatively soon. But that's going to end our one quick segment. We're going to get into our last one here, and that's opening day tomorrow. Pretty exciting to actually see the NHL games in their home arenas and see the fans come out and show out. It'll be really exciting to watch. And we've got two games. We've got the Rangers and Lightning, and then we've got the Kings and Golden Knights. Let's start with the Rangers and Lightning. What do you want to see from this game when it hits puck drop tomorrow?
Yeah, a great opening slate for tonight. Good job by the NHL picking these two games. These are two very exciting games. For the Rangers and the Lightning, I think what I'm really most looking forward to is seeing how the Rangers young guys step up at all this year, right? Lafreniere and Kako specifically have been maybe disappointing, underwhelming so far in their careers. I mean, this is the number 2 pick in 2018 and the number 1 pick in 2019. Like these were supposed to be first line guys, and they just haven't been. Whether it's Gallant not playing young guys, which he's known to do, or just their inability to adapt to the NHL game, they just haven't been there yet, and they have not been what they're supposed to be. Maybe it changes this year, right? I mean, this is a good make or break year for both of them. Capo's on a new contract. Lafreniere, I think, is on the last year of his ELC. It's coming close to the put up or shut up time for them. And with the team they have in front of them, Panarin and Zibanejad, and they just signed Trocheck, I mean, they're insulated. They have a system. They don't need to be relied on, but they need to be effective. And for me, that's what I'm watching because that could take the Rangers from good team to cup contender.
Yeah, it's really going to be interesting to look at what type of team this is going to be for the future, along with what it's going to be for this season. Obviously, you mentioned Trocheck getting signed to this team. I think it's a really good piece for them. And going forward, obviously, I think they're in the mindset of we got to win a cup this year, if not next year, before we have to rely on some of our younger guys. And obviously, it is a little concerning to see their ice time and their production level based on the last couple of years. I know the playoffs they did pretty well, but obviously we want to see what they can do in the regular season if they can hold their own.
Absolutely.
So it'll be really interesting to watch. Other than that, though, I mean, I'm looking at this game and this matchup. Tampa Bay, we know they're going to be good, but that's going to be for at least the entire season. They're going to be good for this game, and to start off the NHL season. I like the Rangers. They always start off with a little bit of spark. I think they just have a better overall lineup. right now. For me, Tampa, I think they just need to get in a little bit of a groove, and they're more of a relaxed group because they know of the talent they have on their team and the depth that they have. So I'm going to take the Rangers in this game 4-2. I think there's going to be an empty net goal later in the game, so that's why I've got the spread at 2.
Yeah, it's a good pick. Tampa's very interesting coming to this year because, they've had this dynasty almost of sorts this past 3 or 4 years. They've been excellent for obvious reasons. Everyone knows that, but I think it's time they're going to transition a bit. They lost McDonough in the offseason. They lost Palat. Guys like Killorn are approaching their mid-30s as opposed to their early 30s. It's not the same team that it was, right? It's not a good idea to bet against Tampa because we saw in the playoffs they probably exceeded expectations, going to the cup final just on toughness alone. But, you know, this season's going to be really interesting for them because Hagel is going to have a bigger role. Nick Paul is going to have a bigger role. Guys like Kucherov and Stamkos, I don't know if Stamkos can produce the way he did last year, right? I mean, that might have been the best year of his career, and he had a 60-goal season in 2012. Yet still, he was amazing last year. Kucherov, we know, is a great player, but the injuries are starting to pile up for him. I don't know if he can sustain that level of play. I just think Tampa has too many question marks, and we know they're not going to take the regular season super seriously. So I think the Rangers take this one too.
Yeah, real quick, I'll add on. This team kind of reminds me of, you know, I would say the 2 to 3 years after Chicago's last Stanley Cup when they really start to
Mhm.
let pieces go. And even if they're older, it's going to impact them. I still think they're going to be a pretty good team this year, just in the sense of the guys the guys they have in their locker room. They'll be able to get it done and figure it out throughout the season. But for this game, opening night, obviously, I think the Rangers is the choice. All right, let's get into the next game and the last game we have to go over here. And that's going to be the Golden Knights versus the Kings. I really do like this matchup, not besides, the names of the team, Knights versus Kings, kind of cool. But I really like to look at the Golden Knights here because of what their team did last year and how much they failed to secure their spot in the playoffs and then ultimately got dropped out of it just due to injuries and also due to other players coming into the organization. And if I'm going to circle two people from this matchup here, the first one I'm going to look at is Jack Eichel because I mean this is his first full year with the team. He's finally had an offseason where he can be healthy. This should be there should be no more excuses for his gameplay. So I think there is going to be quite a bit of pressure on his shoulders for this upcoming season. I think they would want the impact right away. So I feel like most of the Golden Knight fans are going to be looking at number 9 to be productive in this game. As for the Kings, they're kind of a little bit, I don't know, kind of misdirection as what they exactly want to do going forward. I like their team still. I think they're a little bit better than a team we talked about earlier, like the Sharks. But I don't think they're that great of a team going into this season. But I think they'll be able to pull out some wins here and there, and that's from your depth guys like Brandon Lemieux. I think he's more of a physical presence, not necessarily the skillful guy, but he'll be able to lay his body out on the ice and wear down that other team easily. And I really do like some of the older guys and older leadership they have on the Kings still. And I'm going to ultimately take the Kings here, though, in this matchup. I'm going to have the Kings 3, Knights 2. I just don't have much belief in the success of the Golden Knights and their team going forward, even though they did get a pretty good coach in the offseason.
Yeah, you nailed it with Jack Eichel and the Vegas Golden Knights. I'm really high in the Knights this year. Partially because of their coach signing Bruce Cassidy in the offseason. Great signing by them, but also partially because of Jack Eichel, right? I mean, this is now a year removed from his injury. He's now accustomed to the system. He's accustomed to living outside of Buffalo. And I know you're not the biggest Jack Eichel fan, being a Buffalo fan for so many years. But for me, I think he's got a real system and real talent around him for the first time in his career. And I think that he's going to have a great year, and he's going to finally live up to maybe what he could have been. But a lot of that is on him, right? Because Pacioretty, gone. Dadonov gone. These are cap casualties. They got nothing back for them. Leonard, their goalie, just got injured for the year. Now Logan Thompson is their starting goalie. That's another thing that's going to be interesting to watch in this game is Logan Thompson. But Jack Eichel is going to be a lot on him for him to do. And he's going to have to carry this team. And I think he does it personally. I think he shows up and lives up to the hype, and he's the true 1C he's supposed to be. Now, but it's not certain, right? It's definitely
It's not. And I at the end of the day, even though like obviously I wouldn't be a huge fan of his, I still think he's one of the best gifted American born NHLers in the game right now. Just best players in the league. And I would say that when he was on the Sabres too. And like you said, now that he's on a team where he's surrounded by really good talent, and has a wonderful coaching staff, I believe there is no excuse, is what I'm putting at though. Yeah, I mean, he might not start off great, but I would assume that he should be at the top of the top when it comes to looking at the centerman position. He should be in the top. Honestly, he should be in the top eight, just based on how young he is and the skill that he has. And now he's in a better spot. I think he should be able to thrive there. So that's why I really want to look and see how he responds to this new role. You can look at other guys too. Obviously, the goaltending situation, like you talked about, but also just the leadership roles there, like Mark Stone. I want to see what he's going to be doing as a captain there, making sure he can manage a locker room. So it's really just a flip of the coin right now, in my eyes, to see how this will pan out for the Golden Knights.
Absolutely. And as for the LA Kings, they're in a similar situation to the Rangers. They exceeded expectations last year. They made the playoffs and gave Edmonton a real scare. And then they have these two young guys in Turcotte and Byfield, who are the number 5 and number 2 picks respectively, who just haven't lived up to the hype yet. They just have not had consistent NHL production, and maybe that changes this year. But it's going to rely, if they want to take a step forward, it's on them. It's not going to be on Kopitar, who's 34 now. It's not going to be on Quick, who's in his 36th season, I think. Those guys cannot be relied on anymore the way they were when they won those cups. It has to be on.
They're going to need step ups from their other goaltender, Cal Peterson. I mean, he's realistically he's had some action so far in his young NHL career, but he needs to take that next step and become a dominant goaltender in this league, just for them to have a fighting chance. And I mean, at the end of the day, we look at a team like the Sharks we were just talking about with their older group and their younger guys. I think this team is well more set off. I think they're kind of in the same category a little bit. But I do like the way that LA has played last year. I think they play pretty physical. Like I mentioned, Brendan Lemieux, I think they do have some guys on here that can really wear you out rather than beat you at a skill point.
Yeah, and getting Kevin Fiala in the offseason, another great move by them. That should definitely help their scoring. But if I'm going to bet on it, I would take Vegas 4-1 in this game just because of the defense, right? I think Bruce Cassidy is going to install a great defense. And when you have guys like Alex Pietrangelo, Shea Theodore, Mark Stone on forward to help defensively, it's going to create real struggles for those young guys in LA. I think they're going to struggle to score, and that's why I would take I'll take Vegas 4-1 tomorrow night.
Sounds very reasonable. I like both picks, both sides from it. We'll see what happens. Obviously, anything can happen on opening night. There's always some upsets. There's always some head scratchers, and that's why they play the game. So it'll be really interesting to see what they do going forward. Real quick, I mean, this wasn't planned, but who do you got Stanley Cup? I mean, 2 teams. Who do you got?
All right. Oof. I will have Carolina versus Colorado again, and I'll take Carolina.
Really? Ooh.
Yeah. Love Carolina.
Right. I'll throw I got Rangers versus it's probably gonna be Colorado for me too.
Yeah,
I got Rangers, Colorado.
They're too good.
Rangers this year, baby. That's
wow.
who I got. Obviously, it's gonna change, but that's my way too early prediction. Hopefully, it comes true. Hopefully not. Hopefully, it's the Sabres, but
hopefully it's the Panthers.
But. True. I'll take that as a conference final championship. I'll take that all day.
Absolutely.
But Either than that, anything else you want to talk about hockey-wise?
Nope, just excited for the games tomorrow.
I know, man. I'm going to sit back and relax and enjoy some hockey. So I'm excited for it. Thanks for joining me on this, dude. Always great. Hopefully to see you next week.
Yep, see you next week.
All right, guys. We're going to do a quick transition here into our football group and going to bring on my guys, Tim and Ben, just the three of us today. How are you guys doing?
It's another victory Monday, so I'm happy as usual.
Yeah, I mean,
my life is a disaster.
Go ahead. We'll give you 30 seconds. Let it out.
I don't even want to talk about it. Seminoles, Dolphins, doesn't matter.
I will say, Tim, I was very close to changing my name to AFC East champs, like with the dates where it's like 9/25 to 10/9. But I thought, you guys are going through exactly what we were going through.
All I'm saying is
3 weeks
ago,
if
the big Oos comes back with scrambled eggs in his brain and takes his team to the playoffs, I don't want to hear about it ever again. I don't want to hear about Tom Brady, Deshaun Watson, Jimmy Garoppolo, Lamar Jackson. It's over. It's his time. All right. Can't even see straight. Apparently, he's only in section 2 of 5 of concussion protocol. So this is going to be going on for a little bit. I think he would sell his soul to play against Brian Flores and the Steelers. So I think that's the date that I'm looking at. I think he misses Minnesota, but I don't think there's any way on this earth he's missing a game against Brian Flores.
Well, either way, we got to get through these games, and it comes with injuries. Unfortunate from time to time, drives us crazy, but that's the name of the game. And to me, I don't know, it's been weird. It seems like ever since the whole Tua situation, you just notice the head injuries that much more. It's been more common this season, and it's kind of just mind-boggling because I feel like they, put 5 different rules in each season to get away from those type of injuries. But that being said, let's get into some other news. We've got, guys, our first fire of the season. Let's go. We got Matt Rule. He's done in Carolina. This is what we've been living for, and we're only through week 5. Someone got fired after week 5. This is awesome. Let's get your reactions here. We'll start at the bottom. Ben, give it to me. What are you thinking?
I mean, I think we knew that this was his last season, no matter what. I don't know if
I think we all can say we knew he was going to be the first coach fired, right?
I don't know. There's a couple that I thought could have challenged him. I thought I would have said, if I would have put money down, I would have said Matt Rule. But I think, you could have had some other arguments there. But yeah, I don't think any of us are shocked that it's him first.
Tim, what do you got?
I think he's going to revive the Nebraska Cornhuskers.
Dude, same here.
I've already got a plan in place for Matt Rule that I think will be perfect, but it's not the time for that. In terms of the Panthers, they're in a really tough spot because their defense is perfect for Phil Snow, but Phil Snow's not staying. He's very loyal to Matt Rule. They go back, I believe, all the way to 2001 in their UCLA days when they were both position coaches there, which is a long, long time, And Phil Snow is also pushing 70. I don't think he's going to want to work with new people at that age. But I'm hearing things about like McCaffrey might get traded. They might blow this whole thing up. Don't know who on earth would take that McCaffrey contract for.
Well, I will say this about the McCaffrey contract, which I find interesting. If teams do want to take it on, they only pay $660,000 the rest of this year. But after this year, none of it's owed to him. So they can cut him without taking any cap hit. I also thought the same thing, Tim, at first, but I saw that and thought that changes everything.
Is someone looking to rent Christian? Like, would you give up a 2 for half a season of Christian McCaffrey?
I think some people give up a 1, depending if they're trying to win a championship or not.
A 1 might be 1. I would be shocked if a team gives up a 1. A 2. Well, here's the thing, because they can also restructure it. They can just say, hey, we're either going to, because he's owed, I think after this year, still 3 years, $36 million.
Yeah.
So you could just say, hey, we could just cut that down significantly and you're still getting paid instead of now having to go hit a market, whatever it is. So
I don't understand the whole let's blow this up now. I think the Panthers definitely got set back by the Matt Rule era, but I don't know if they got set back to the point where you got to talk about moving Brian Burns, right? Like, I think that, to me, that's crazy. Like, Brian Burns is one of the best pass rushers in the league. He's 24, 25 years old. Get him locked up. It shouldn't take this long, or it shouldn't take that long to reboot this, because there are players on this team. Like, the offensive line is slowly getting there. You have McCaffrey, you have DJ Moore. They like what they have in some of those younger guys on offense, like Shi Smith. But Ike Ekwonu seems to be a huge hit right now at left tackle. I think you get a coach, you get a quarterback, easier said than done. But you might have an opportunity to go get that quarterback this year, because I don't think they're going to win too many more games, especially with PJ Walker under center, which is going to happen for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I'll say this real quick. The way I see NFL firings nowadays, once a new head coach or a new GM, new staff is brought up into an organization, they'll start off with what they have for usually a couple years, but ultimately at the end of the day, I feel like when they go through an interview process to take lead of a new organization, they're going to want to bring in their players so they can get that culture built, in the sense of saying, hey, I drafted you for a reason. It's really, really difficult for a coach to walk over into a team like the Carolina Panthers for where they're at and be like, oh, these are my guys. I feel like most coaches and GMs really want to build their culture, their staff, and their ultimate goal of getting to a championship. So I don't see them staying put with this team for very long. I think it will get blown up. People will be moved. They may stay on the team for a little bit once they get a new head coach after this season. They'll obviously have someone come in and just finish it out. But once they get that new head coach, I think it's going to be clean house, guys. They're going to want to really make a culture standpoint and bring in guys that they drafted or signed themselves. I think it's just the new style of creating a really good organization. And we've seen that even with some of these past hires that have happened in the NFL. You can talk about Brian Dable and the Giants. Obviously, he's drafted his class, but other than that, it's like, why do you still have Daniel Jones? Why do you still have some of the other guys? They're going to ride it out, then eventually get rid of them, and then their full team will be assembled in a couple of years. I think that's really what's going to happen here in Carolina. So at the end of the day, Matt Rule I don't think he was ready at all for the NFL, guys. He's a college coach at best, and I do think he will be one of the front runners for Nebraska, which is kind of unfortunate for Nebraska fans, in my opinion. Anybody else got anything else on this topic?
I know you're supposed to go with like the best man for the job, but I kind of feel like this has to be an offensive coach, because this offense is a disaster. Like, schematically, depth-wise, like I said, they have some nice players, but after DJ Moore and McCaffrey and Ike Ekwonu and the other tackle, Taylor Moton, there's not much that I think is salvageable on offense. I like the defense, but I think this offense needs a complete reworking. And also, they've been bad schematically for a really long time. Even with Cam Newton, like, it worked because Cam was a freak, but they didn't have very good players playing around him those last couple of years.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you on that one, Tim, just also because of the fact that most teams that don't have a Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers, which is such a rarity to find, you're not going to – you're not going to find quarterbacks that are that, like, game-changing, where you need to go get an offensive-minded coach. I mean, look at the Rams. The Rams did it the opposite, where they have an offensive-minded coach, and they built their defense up. And then, obviously, Stafford, he's a great quarterback, but now it's showing that is he as good as we thought he was, or was it just McVay's system there in LA? So unless they can go out and in the draft, if they really believe that, they're going to be drafting their guy for the foreseeable future, it's still going to take 2 to 3 years for him to become that next great quarterback. And you have to get, I think, an offensive-minded coach, especially to help these guys when they're young.
Sounds good, guys. That was a good first topic there. Let's get into the next one, which kind of goes along with this, the previous topic. And right now, eventually Odell Beckham Jr. is going to be signed to a team. And it sounds like more than likely Christian McCaffrey will be dealt this season. if that is true, which player do you want for your team right now? This is a head scratcher for me because obviously we haven't seen Odell off of the injury, how he's doing with route running, and will he be the same is kind of the question. McCaffrey, I mean, he's gotten dinged up a little bit this year, but it seems like he's had a more promising season than previous ones in the past. And I don't know. I mean, for me right now, I think it's more important to have a more lethal wide receiver than a running back in this day and age of football. It goes for also like signing running backs. Now, I would never pay a big running back big money. I think it's kind of dumb. You can just redraft or go out and sign someone that works for your system. But it's very rare to come across a lethal wideout weapon like OBJ, just with his wingspan and just his ability to run routes and just break over through schemes of defenses and dominate. So at this point in time, I'm taking Odell Beckham Jr. right after the ACL surgery. How about you guys?
This is honestly a tough one because it's not like McCaffrey hasn't gotten injured in the past. I mean, it's the past 2 years. Everybody knows about it. I mean, even this year, they put him on the injury report, which I think partly has to do with just giving him rest because of his past. But I mean, he's still not. He's going to be probably dealing with that for the rest of his career, where you're going to be seeing, is he going to, every time he gets hit, as somebody who's had Christian McCaffrey, especially in fantasy for the past 3 years, watched him a lot. He's one of those guys that every time he gets hit, it's like, oh, okay, like, is he going to get back up? OBJ, I know it's also kind of the same thing. He's had the ACL twice now, and it's coming back from that twice. I mean, once is hard enough. But twice, it's a little tough for me to choose OBJ just because of that, just because of his past with the injuries. And I think McCaffrey's weren't as serious. And I think that, I just think that you can do more, like you said, Matt. Running backs are easily replaceable. You can have Christian McCaffrey, and you can also go out and get another guy so McCaffrey doesn't have to have 25 touches, 30 touches a game, 20. You can give him the ball 10 to 15 times a game, which, again, you're not going to pay big money for that. But he's still Christian McCaffrey, still one of the best in the league when healthy. And then you can work him up, work his way up, which is exactly actually what Carolina did this year so far. Is he started off only getting about 10 to 15 carries for the first 3 weeks. And now you're starting to see him get 25 carries. You're starting to see him get 20 carries. So for me, I'm going to go with Christian McCaffrey by a little bit just because of his versatility, and I think his injuries were a little less serious.
I'm going to go with Odell because I just think wide receiver is so much more valuable than running back right now. And also, if you're going to trade for Christian McCaffrey, like you said, it is a rental and then a restructure, or a rental and then another trade and release, because that is a lot of money to pay a running back who I believe is 26, 27 now. But if you're going to trade for Christian McCaffrey right now, you'd probably have to have a winning record, not going to give up assets for a running back in a lost season. And you'd have to really value the running back position. And you'd have to not have a guy that you think is your franchise back at that position. And if only there was a team in the Pacific Northwest that had a winning record and really, really, really values the run game and just lost their starting running back for the entire season. I don't know. You guys know of any teams like that? They love running backs up there. And they just lost one.
Are you talking about Seattle right now?
Yeah. And I like Kenneth Walker, but Kenneth Walker missed almost all of camp after having surgery.
Yeah, but are we trusting Geno Smith the rest of the season? Look, don't get me wrong. He's played phenomenal so far. He's played great. But at the end of the day, who after 4 weeks was also in the top 3 in passing yards last year? I'm pretty sure Jimmy Garoppolo was in the top 3 last year. Or maybe not Jimmy
Ryan Fitzpatrick was like that at least one of his seasons that he played too.
Yeah, but I know I shouldn't say it, but it feels different with Geno. He's making high-level throws, man. He is making some it's not even like the Jimmy Garoppolo where everything is schemed open and he can't beat certain coverages if you paid him to. Geno Smith looks like an actual good quarterback. Now, maybe the Seahawks finally found one of the McVay disciples that actually works. It kind of seems like the Shanahan disciples are the ones that actually last with teams, and McVay disciples are kind of flaming out. Cough, cough. Cliff Kingsbury got a job just because he's friends with Sean McVay. But this Shane Waldron guy in Seattle he's got the ball moving. Seattle's got, I believe, the most efficient offense in football.
Yeah, right now this is kind of, for me, looking like the Cardinals usually are. They're great in the first beginning of the season, and they'll obviously decline. And I think Gino's fine. I just don't think he'll be at this elite point later in the season. I mean, you never really know what a team is, they say, until around week believe it, they say like week 8 or like week 10. So I think that could change. But ultimately, getting back to this segment, guys, you got to remember, a lot of people talk about Christian McCaffrey not as just a running back. I mean, he can do everything. He can be put out at a wide receiver position. He's really good at blocking too. I mean, he does everything. But when I hear that, I kind of remind everybody, Odell can do the exact same thing. I mean, have you seen so many plays of his in the past where he's throwing the ball, he's doing double reverses, whatever it may be, he's lined up in the backfield, whatever it may be. He's able to do anything you ask him. But I think realistically, at the end of the day, anybody would take Odell just because of yes, he's had some injuries, but I think after this full year of recovering from the ACL and just with McCaffrey's uncertainty and really can he take over a game for a franchise, I think people are going to lean towards Odell Beckham Jr. That's just where I'm at there.
Odell Beckham was on his way to like 200 yards in the Super Bowl before he
popped
his ACL.
Easily.
I'm also going to say that hot take, they both end up in Buffalo by the end of the year.
You guys printing money over there?
Seriously.
Hey, McCaffrey, like I said, 600 or 660,000 the whole year.
Well, the only way Odell is coming to Buffalo, it's on a 1-year deal. I don't think out of the teams that were listed, any of them, maybe Green Bay could sign him to a multi-year contract. But other than that, it would make sense to make a super team right then and there. You get Odell, you get McCaffrey, and then say goodbye to them the following season. But I think they would do that for a ring and a heartbeat.
According to Von Miller, OBJ is already on his way. His bag's already packed, according to Von Miller. So we don't know. For all we know, I'm not going to get my hopes up until he's actually signed. But it seems like if Von's talking to him in his ear every single day, at least one of these guys will end up in Buffalo. McCaffrey, I think that's a little bit more of a stretch because, again, is Bean going to want to give up a pick? We'll see, but I think at least one of them ends up in Buffalo.
It's very interesting with, obviously the ties with Von and Odell Beckham Jr., and then just obviously the Carolina Buffalo Bills being a thing for the past 5-6 years, however long it's been. It ultimately looks like it could work out, but like you said, I won't believe it until I see it. But let's get into the next segment here, guys. And that's the NFC East right now is kind of labeled the best division in football. Obviously, the Eagles are the only unbeaten team left at 5-0. Cowboys and Giants are both at 4-1. And then obviously the Commanders are in dead last at 1-4. What do you guys think of these teams that are in the right direction, that being the Eagles, Cowboys, and Giants? Are they for real going forward? And is this the best division in football?
I'm not going to go as far as the best division in football yet. I think that's a little bit of a stretch just because as good as, the Cowboys, they're doing well, of course, but I'm still not sold on them. It's just not possible for me to be sold on them yet. The Giants, I'm loving what Dable's doing there. I'm loving everything he's doing. But at the end of the day, I'm sorry, your quarterback is Daniel Jones. That's not going to win you football games against high-quality football. I mean, yeah, they beat Green Bay in London, but is Green Bay they're not looking the same as they usually do in the past. And so I'm not even sold on the Packers. So those two teams, I got to see a little more. Especially now because the Cowboys, they're going to have a controversy. Everybody knows it, that especially if they win next week and Cooper Rush beats Philadelphia, it's going to be a heyday with every reporter at possible, every single news outlet. So Cowboys could have something coming their way, a mess coming their way with the whole quarterback controversy. The Eagles, I do think, are for real. I really like they're loaded. They got from top to bottom. They are a really good team. I don't know. I see you shaking your head there, Matt, but I don't know if there's one position there that they really, really need like intensely. So I like Philly. I think that they'll be, I don't know if they're yet Super Bowl team because they're obviously, still pretty young with Jalen Hurts back there. I have to see more there. But I think Philly's the one team that can contend out of these four. Maybe Dallas can. And then obviously we know Washington might be the worst team in football. And the Giants, they're 4-1, but not even close to sold on them yet.
If you want to go for it, go ahead. I've got to, obviously take that in for a second. But the Eagles
on this very show, I told you the Eagles were for real. They were going to win the division. They were going to win 12 games. And I still might have sold them short. They might their schedule's not very difficult because I believe aren't they playing like a second or first place schedule?
Their schedule is the easiest schedule.
I remember looking at it in the offseason.
After the first couple weeks, they have the easiest schedule in the NFL.
They might win more than 12 games.
Let's just go through it real quick. First game, they barely beat the Jags. Then they blow out the Commanders. Yes, they beat the Vikings, but anybody can beat Kirk Cousins when he's not on his A game. Then they beat the Lions in a shootout. Lions defense is terrible.
Worst of all time.
And then they just play the Cardinals. And obviously they were just a yard short from a first down, or, obviously if they make the field goal at the end of the day, then they lose their first game. I don't think that they are labeled the best team right now in the NFL, or this 5-0 record really shows that they are up there. I think they're getting lucky on some of these games, guys. They're not dominating these games each and every week, in my opinion. Obviously, they are going to have an easier success path to winning this division than the Cowboys right now, because I think the Cowboys have a little bit of a harder schedule, if I do recall looking at it. But at the end of the day, I think the Cowboys are going to beat the living shit out of the Eagles next week, to be honest. I think if it's Cooper Rush or Dak Prescott, I like their defense a lot more. They play with a lot more aggression. I like the size. I like the scheme from who's the coordinator in Dallas? Is it defensive coordinator?
Offense or defense?
Quinn. Yes, Quinn. I love his game. I love his game a lot. And for me, yes, the Eagles are a good football team, but they're not worth all this hype right now. It is way too early, and I just don't think they've played anybody yet.
I do think, yes, they're not the best team in football. I think that they're the best team in this division, though. I still, again, they just have the deepest roster. I think you're still also seeing close games because they still have a head coach who's pretty new to being a head coach. He's still getting used to it.
He's a goofball. That's what he is.
But here's the other thing, Matt. You're talking about these games, right? The Lions, that game, the narrative up until last week was that they have one of the best offenses in the league. They beat them in a shootout. The Vikings, coming off of the week where their offense looked unbelievable, Justin Jefferson looked unbelievable, they were very hyped up. What do? They go play the Eagles. Justin Jefferson does nothing. Kirk Cousins does nothing. Now the Vikings aren't talked about. Washington, another team that had Wentz playing great before it, then they go to play Philly. What happens? Now they're down. Jaguars, another team that people were saying, Urban Meyer's gone. Everything's good there now in Jacksonville. They might win that division. And now they go and they honestly have a horrible start against the Jags too. So it's 14-0 pretty early. So I think, yes, they haven't played the hardest schedule, and I'm looking at their schedule now. Oh my, it is easy the rest of the year.
Yeah.
But I would say they're kind of like this year's Bengals. Or last year's Bengals, where they're going to improve. The record will be better than the Bengals was last year just because of their schedule.
Yeah. And so for me as well, I'll mention this real quick. You look at the two teams between the Cowboys and the Eagles and the teams that they've played so far. To me, what's more impressive at the end of the day, besides the first game for the Cowboys, look at the quarterbacks they're playing against. They played against Tom Brady. Yes, he was older, and that was just an ugly opening game between the Bucs and the Cowboys. But besides that, Cowboys went on to beat Joe Burrow. They went on to beat the Giants, which, I mean, not a huge accomplishment based on what we thought they were going to be at the beginning of the year. Then they go to beat the Commanders, which the Eagles have done as well. But they just went over to LA and beat the Rams 22-10, guys, at their home stadium. And the Rams are the reigning Super Bowl champions. I know they're without some players. Matthew Stafford maybe a little bit dinged up, but it's Matthew Stafford at the end of the day, a guy who just throws all over the field. And that defense took control. Yes, they only put up 22 points, but that's with their secondary quarterback in Cooper Rush. Obviously, a lot is going to be brought up when Dak Prescott's ready to return, and it could be this week against the Eagles. I like the Dallas Cowboys team a lot better. I think their defense plays better. I think they will have a better offense with Cooper Rush or with Dak Prescott than the Eagles. Once they get once they are able to balance out their run game and really decide who's going to be that main RB1 and just control the game a little bit better. I think it's going to be the Cowboys at the end of the day.
Can I talk about Brian Daboll really quick before we get to Washington? Because I imagine each of us is just going to collectively take a big shit on Washington.
I'll let you guys do that. I don't even need to say anything about Washington.
Brian Daboll, I thought Brian Daboll was to be a good coach. He was my number 2 option for the Dolphins. Brian Daboll is a dude.
Coach of the year already.
Really look at their roster. All due respect to those guys because they're all pro players. That roster stinks. It stinks healthy, and they're not healthy. Like their wide receiver room, which is already not good, is completely banged up. They're throwing gotta have it late down conversions to David Sills, UDFA like 3 years ago out of, I believe, West Virginia. Daniel Bellinger is a player for them. Like I thought if they were going to do anything on offense, it was going to be all Saquon Barkley, and a lot of it is Saquon Barkley. But up until that fourth quarter, he had been relatively held in check, and they were in the game with the Packers. Hall of Fame quarterback Aaron Rodgers, one of the greatest ever. Brian Daboll's offense is efficient. Like, look, Daniel Jones isn't the guy. Don't get me wrong. Like, Daniel Jones is not going to be their quarterback next year. But it's night and day compared to what we normally get from Daniel Jones. It's still not very good, but he's protecting the ball more. If you take away some of those bonehead decisions, he's playing some pretty good ball. Their defense, we knew would be kind of good because it was good last year. Under Patrick Graham. I thought it'd get worse with Wink Martindale. It's just as good, if not better. And honestly, some of their most impactful defensive players are young guys. Like Kayvon Thibodeau came in right away, and he's playing some really, really good football. Xavier McKinney from Alabama a couple years ago, he's a really good player too. But the roster itself, it might be the worst in the division. And there's a team in this division that's 1-4, with I believe their only win being the Jags. Am I correct on that? Is that Washington's win?
I'm looking right now.
I believe it is.
Yeah, and I think Washington's got a night and day better roster than the Giants. Like, if you take out the coaches in that game and just let those two teams play, I think Washington would beat the crap out of the Giants. And that just says a lot about what Brian Daboll has been able to do in just 7 months or 8 months.
I completely agree with you, man. I mean, I've said after this week, Daboll is coach of the year. And it's not even close right now compared to these other coaches that have been, off to another job, new organization. But, I mean, it starts with their GM and obviously them taking a leap on Daboll, obviously familiar with each other in Buffalo. But kind of going back to what we were talking about with the whole Matt Rule thing and the replacement for a Carolina Panthers team, this is exactly the blueprint you want that's happening in New York, or New Jersey. But this is what happened in Buffalo. It's kind of starting to be a little bit of a tree because remember when Sean McDermott got to the Bills, he had Tyrod Taylor, Charles Clay, LaShawn McCoy, a couple good pieces here and there, but not a full team. Ultimately, at the end of the day, they started to trade those pieces away, and everybody was like, "What are you doing?" But they won and went to the playoffs their first year. I think this is exactly what Brian Daboll is going to be doing going forward with this organization. He's finding ways to win with what he has, and that's what makes a really good coach and builds an awesome culture. So don't be surprised that we see some pieces leave the Giants after this season in return for more draft picks. but this guy is right on the money and knows what a true turnaround of an organization looks like after seeing it firsthand in Buffalo. And I think the Giants are going to be really the team to beat in the next coming years after they get through a couple drafts and develop their core guys.
Well, here's the last thing I'll say about the Giants is Dable's doing everything right there. However, Saquon, I'm not sure is going to be there long term.
Nope.
On top of the fact that, yeah, they've looked good, but they beat the Titans by 1, Panthers by 3, the Bears by 8, and then the Packers. So I still want to see a little more. I want to see that like this next stretch is going to be huge for them to see really how much this culture is changing because of they play the Ravens, the Jags, Seahawks, and then obviously they play the Texans and they play some bad teams. But these next 3 games, I think, are really going to show how much they're not just Daniel Jones or whoever, like just the whole team is growing. And I think they'll handle it great. I mean, maybe not against Baltimore. Baltimore might do some bad things to them, but I mean, they could realistically beat the Jags, beat the Seahawks, beat the Texans, and they would. I mean, that would put them at 7-2. I mean, I'm not going to say it, but I'm not going to say it like it is set in stone. But this NFC is not good. It's not good at all. We could potentially see. You know, we were talking about the whole entire or 3 teams making it from the AFC West. It could be the NFC East that has 3 teams in the NFC make the playoffs, especially due to the fact that Cowboys, Giants, and Eagles don't exactly have the hardest schedule going down the road.
I like to take guys, and obviously I don't think we really need to talk about Washington much unless there's a point you guys want to bring up. I mean,
Ron Rivera's got to be gone.
I got one
he's
thing.
Got to be gone.
I mean, he's already calling out their quarterback that they just
terrible.
They traded for, by the way. They traded for him.
Multiple day 2 picks. The Washington Commanders are 10th in passing yards. And if I'm reading this correctly, it's 32, 31, 30, 29. Yeah, they're 26th in points. They don't score. They turn the ball over, and they're flat in the red zone. And their defense, very highly paid, highly drafted defense, nothing. It gives them nothing. Montez Sweat gets home a couple times a game. The rest of that defense is terrible. Blow the franchise to the ground. Obviously, we know the problems with ownership. I know Jason Wright's trying to do his thing as the new team president, but wow, this is just a horrible, horrible franchise from top to bottom.
I agree with that. Let's get into our last segment here, guys. Real quick, we're going to go through the best teams that are under 500 right now. Everybody's going to go through their picks, and I believe we're going to start off with the LA Rams, and I believe this was Ben's pick, so go ahead, let us know, why is this true?
I mean, honestly, I went back and forth on 2 teams here. And the main reason I went with the Rams is, Matt, you said it earlier. They just won a Super Bowl. Like, I know that they're not the same exact team. You know, they don't have – now they got Allen Robinson. They bring in Bobby Wagner. They lose Von Miller. But they're still a very, very good team. Like, they should be, at least. At least they should be a good team. On paper, they are the best team in this division. They should be the best team in this division, yet they're not. There's obviously a lot to speculate. Why is it Matthew Stafford now? You know, did he just decide to win one Super Bowl and then actually say, no, I'm actually not that good anymore? Is it just they can't get this offense going because McVay is just trying to feed Kupp over and over and over and over and over and over again? I mean, it's really Cooper Kupp's their whole offense right now. I don't know another person that you could say. Tyler Higbee is their second best option right now, and he's getting 10-plus targets a game. When you have Tyler Higbee Tyler Higbee's a great tight end in this league. I like him a lot, but when he's getting 10-plus targets a game, you know there's an issue. I'm sorry, he should not be getting that many targets a game. He's not Travis Kelce. He's not Mark Andrews. But the Rams, at the end of the day, still have, you know, the best defensive player arguably ever in Aaron Donald. They got arguably the best corner in the game in Jalen Ramsey. Sean McVay was talked about to be this next great head coach for years and years and years. I don't think that they have one or a couple great years, Super Bowl, and then it's nothing else after that. I just don't think that's what Sean McVay's going to end up doing in LA. So I think they will turn it around. I mean, I think they got the perfect game coming up next to turn it around against Carolina. They can really just lay it on them. But I mean, it is a little bit concerning because they lost to the Niners in a pretty bad fashion. The Cowboys, you got to win that game if you're LA. So it is a question to say, yeah, are they, was it just a one-year wonder where they went to the Super Bowl with Matt Stafford and now Matt Stafford's not the guy? It's a question you could ask, but I don't think so. And I think the Rams, they're Super Bowl champs last year for a reason. So, they'll get it together.
Pretty good take there. I like everything I've heard. I think it's very true, though. Like you said, they're just the Super Bowl champion, so can't give up on them too fast. Let's get into Tim's selection here. And you're bringing up the Cleveland Browns, I see. So this should be an interesting one. Let's hear it.
Browns are 2-3. Their 3 losses come by a collective of 6 points. Look, the Browns have had to deal with a lot the last couple months, and don't get me wrong, they brought almost all of it upon themselves. I feel no sympathy for them. In fact, I root for them to lose every single time they're on the field. But this is a good football team with a good coaching staff and a good front office. Like, this is just an organization that, outside of the obvious stuff that they've done in the last couple months and some of the reprehensible decisions they've made, they're just run well football-wise. When it comes to football, I mean, Kevin Stefanski's a good coach. I know a lot of Browns fans have a problem with his play calling and some of his fourth down decisions. I don't know why they seem to work. He's just a really, really good football coach. Jacoby Brissett from last year to this year, night and day. Jacoby Brissett looks like a starting caliber quarterback. He looks like a top 25 quarterback in the league, and I couldn't tell you that last year. Now, were the 2021 Dolphins just an absolute shit show? Probably. That's probably the cause. But Jacoby Brissett looks really good. Their offensive line is still really good. Their wide receiver room, it's not, spectacular, but Amari Cooper's brought a whole different dimension. They seem to be utilizing Njoku more this year. We know about the running back room. The defense is not great, but they do have, Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney. They're really, really weak in the middle at D tackle at linebacker, but then in the secondary, again, they've got a lot of really good players. I just think outside of the Rams, who have a great roster full of like Hall of Fame guys on defense, and maybe Stafford's a Hall of Famer on offense, this is to me the best roster that's under 500 outside of the Rams. I think maybe they turn it around, but I mean, that is a tough division to play in. I mean, the Steelers, they beat the Steelers, but that was, again, a close game. That score that says 29-17 is not indicative of that game. They got a garbage time, fumble recovery touchdown. But, Patriots, Ravens, Bengals, Dolphins, Bills, Buccaneers, those are their remaining games with Jacoby. I think if they're winning, I wouldn't see a reason to pull Jacoby out for the last 6 games of the season, unless you really, really think that when you bring that other guy back, you're going to be an elite team that can win this division against, Lamar Jackson and the Bengals and all that. I think if you were to have that guy the whole season and he would play the way he used to play, we're talking about the Browns as a top 3 team in the AFC. This roster is just so loaded. I think eventually they'll course correct. They just keep losing close games.
Well, I want to piggyback real quick off Tim. This was the other team I almost picked. Also because they lost to the Jets in the most ridiculous way. That should have been a win. And then they should have won this past Saturday against the Chargers. Just a missed field goal. So they are very close to being a 4-1 team. That I almost chose them, but I ended up just going with the Rams. So I just wanted to point that out real quick.
It's a great roster,
man. I think the Browns, I mean, my goodness, they are just a run-heavy team, it looks like, and they do have a really solid offensive line. That's everything you want when you're starting to rebuild your team. And unfortunately, they do have a quarterback that will be coming in later in the season. And, it's just going to be such a big storyline when that happens. And obviously, we'll be covering it. Obviously, we've got to see where the Browns will be after they get through their games before that guy comes back out of suspension. So it'll be an interesting topic. But I'll end us off here with my team. And I'm going to pick the Bengals here, guys. At the end of the day, they are 2-3 right now. All 3 of their losses have come by just 3 points. So it's not like they're getting blown out by anybody. And I'm going to just go through the teams that they've lost to and have beaten so far. Obviously, opening day was against the Steelers. We're not able to come out with a victory. Anything can happen in week 1. We've known that for years and years and years. But after that, I mean, they play the Cowboys in Dallas, lose by 3. They start off 0-2 on the season. Everybody's like, what's going on? This is a team that just got to the Super Bowl this past year, but then obviously play the Jets. We're able to do their job there. They played a really good Dolphins team too, and were able to capitalize a win as well. But then they just lost to the Ravens, and that was so close, just by 3 points. Obviously, Justin Tucker's not going to miss a game-winning field goal at all, so it was a lock as soon as the Ravens got the ball back. And realistically, at the end of the day, this roster is kind of the same. Besides losing their tight end from last season, it's kind of the same as the team that went to the Super Bowl last year. Obviously, a lot of people were saying maybe they were just frauds and had a dream season to getting there. I think they are, and I think they've grown though, and I think Joe Burrow will slowly get better. And working with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon, even their new tight end, Hayden Hurst. I think he's going to start becoming a real star in this league in the sense of just getting a lot of receptions going forward. And I like the defense too. I think they can hold their own. So I think this is a way too early overreaction. They will turn around their season easily. All right, guys. I think that's all we had for football today. So thank you for joining me. I'm going to get out of the way here, and I'll let you guys take over for basketball and end the show. I'll see you guys next week.
See you, Matty.
Yeah.
All right, got a little basketball action coming up now, huh? I mean,
we're eight days away.
I know it's we did get a little bit of fun with obviously some preseason and the G League Ignite, which we'll get into and everything. But yeah, I mean basketball right around the corner. I know me and you were both excited because both our teams again should be pretty good. Should be at least, but I mean we don't. Obviously, the Celtics are in a interesting situation, but let's just get right into first topic. I mean, it's got to be one of the funniest stories I think I've heard in a while in the NBA. I know that obviously the NBA has a lot of great stories, but Draymond Green, Jordan Poole get into a little fight at practice. They were jawing at each other. Apparently, I again don't know if this is 100% true, but Jordan Poole apparently called him a triple single, and Draymond did not appreciate that. And yeah,
that's the first time I'm hearing this.
Yeah, that's what I saw a couple reports saying that he called him a triple single, and it was over the new contracts because both of them are going to be eligible for a lot of money coming up. But yeah, so Draymond Green gets in his face, Poole shoves him, and then Draymond kind of just says, "Hey, don't push me, young guy. I've been around here a long time," and just clocks him right in the face. You guys can go look up the video. We're not going to show it just because it's. I mean, it is a pretty hard hit. But what do you think about the whole situation? Who's more in the wrong, Poole or Draymond? What do you think?
Oh, Draymond's in the wrong, and I think this has the possibility to end the Warriors. Because look, this has happened a lot of times in basketball, right? But this seems like it was just over something really, really petty. Right? Like there doesn't sound like Jordan Poole made any threats. Doesn't seem like he was actually disrespectful. I think he was more like voicing his opinions on Draymond because Draymond gets away with a lot, as a Warrior and just as an NBA player in general. The Warriors kind of just let Draymond lead in the way that he thinks is fit to lead. But it was easy when he was the defensive player of the year, right? And he was able to ride that cachet, that clout for a while. But Draymond was just a legitimately bad offensive player in the playoffs last year. He had his moments on defense, especially against, Jokic in a couple games. But then Jokic started to really have an answer for him. And then other than that, I mean, sure, he had a great series against Dallas. But what is Dallas outside of Luka? I think his job was relatively easy in that series. And I think you kind of saw other guys are a little more important to the Warriors, especially on offense. Draymond's still valuable, but Jordan Poole's kind of right. Like, it makes a lot of money to not be incredibly impactful on the court. And that money that Draymond's being paid is going to affect Jordan Poole getting paid. But whatever was said, unless there were threats made, talking about family, which I don't think that happened, didn't warrant that reaction from Draymond. Draymond is in the wrong here. There's no story, there's no situation here that can convince me that Draymond is in the right. And if I'm Jordan Poole, we can't go back to just playing basketball after this, right? Especially after it gets leaked to the internet. Like, I'd be in the front office saying it's him or it's me. There's no way I'm taking the court with this dude, and it's fine for now because Draymond's taking a step away. Because I do think even he realized that he was wrong. This is insane.
Yeah,
like guys have gotten into fights in the NBA over real shit. He insulted you in practice because you didn't play well in the playoffs, and Jordan Poole had a really good playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Like he stinks on defense. Don't get me wrong. But especially in that first round where they brought Steph off the bench, like game 1, I think Jordan Poole had almost 40 points against Denver. This is a situation to me that I don't think is going away. I don't think Steve Kerr and Steph Curry and Bob Myers can massage this in the media to make it go away. This is going to get talked about all season if they take the court together this season. This could really derail this whole second window of the Warriors that we've been talking about, because Wiseman looks good in the preseason. That's what's not being talked about. Like, yeah, the Warriors won, but they might get better. Like, Wiseman might be an absolute dude. And this could ruin the second half of this Warriors dynasty.
I will say I think it's a really weird situation too, because it's like we said, the Warriors. It's this team doesn't especially these three, or the main three, Draymond, Clay, and Steph. Oh, we thought they were gonna retire Warriors. They're not gonna whatever. They're there for life. And obviously, I think about 5 days before this, Klay Thompson did call out Jordan Poole a little bit, saying, you got to be a little more humble than what you are. You may be getting paid soon or whatever. But there was talks about that, about how even Klay was coming out and saying stuff about, you got to calm down here, Jordan. You haven't done, in reality, Jordan Poole hasn't done anything that insane in the NBA yet. So for me, it comes down to what exactly was said, which I don't think we'll ever find out. I don't think anybody else will ever find out unless Jordan Poole or Draymond directly comes out and says what was said. But at the end of the day, yeah, you're right. No matter what's said, unless it's like something really bad about family or whatever, which probably is not the case, you don't go and sucker punch your teammate. You just don't do that.
Knock him out, pretty much.
Yeah, and I get he shoved you. Just shove him back then. Like, it's not that hard to just do the same thing that he did. And that happens all the time. That happens in practices all the time. Little scrums. It's an emotional game. People get into it. But it takes a lot for somebody to punch someone in the face. So either something really bad was said by Poole, which I feel like we would have seen more of a reaction in the video from other teammates if he said something that bad. But yeah, Draymond, I think, messed up. I don't know if they'll really do anything about it, if they'll really just try to play it off. Because if they're winning, I think this story might go away if they're winning. And Poole and Draymond seem like they're fine together as long as everything's fine. But if they struggle out the gates, or if there's even a span in the season where they're just struggling, if there's 1 or 2 weeks where they're struggling, neither of them could be playing. It will still come back to, is this affecting the locker room? Is it because of these two way back in October? So the Warriors got their work cut out for them. But I also ask you this: if it was Curry or Clay that Draymond hits, how fast to you is Draymond out of not even just the Warriors? Is Draymond in the league if he punches one of those two in the face? More specifically, Steph.
I think if Draymond Green were to hit Steph Curry, which I think he would hit Clay. I think things could boil over to the point where him and Clay could get into it. But Steph Curry, who's trading for Draymond after he sucker punches the guy that helped him become a Hall of Famer, right? It's one thing when you hit Jordan Poole, but also Draymond, you're like 6'7", 250, dude. Jordan Poole's what? 6'2", 190 on a good day? Come on. A punch to the face, fully wound up because he insulted your game, because he said you're making too much money for the way you play. And also, this thing about Jordan Poole needing to be more humble, it's probably true, right? But these are conversations that happen behind closed doors. It never should have gotten to players saying it to the media. Oh, Jordan Poole's acting different. All right, guy's about to get paid. Guy's a champion. But we're just going to pretend like the Warriors have always just been this nice and humble team. I like the Warriors. I was never like, oh, I hate Steph Curry and all them. But Steph Curry's doing the sleeping celebration against every opponent. they were wearing shirts, kind of poking fun at teams that they would beat, especially the Cavs back in the day.
Yeah,
let's just not pretend that the Golden State Warriors have been Larry Fitzgerald for the last decade.
Yeah, and when we're talking specifically about Draymond too, Draymond, you were front and center saying, "Oh, are the Cavs winning?" Nope. Like right after that whole entire video, that was a meme for months after that game. The whole video was it was everywhere. They made shirts about it, and especially Draymond too. Yes, you've been a great defensive player. You've been a great hype guy for the team, whatever. But at the end of the day, you're not an all-star scorer. You're not an all-star offensive player, and you're getting older. And you in those times where they were celebrating their championships, and he was going on TV talking about LeBron and the Cavs and how the Warriors, they're this dynasty. Poole is now in that situation where he was 2 or 3 years ago, or not 2 or 3 years ago, 5, 6 years ago. So yeah, he's gonna act probably the same way that you were, you, Steph, Clay, all you guys, because again, he joined the team and he watched you guys do that. He watched you guys get bitter after both Clay and Steph got hurt and they missed the playoffs, and everybody was saying, "Oh, the Warriors dynasty's over." They saw how they reacted. Poole was there. He came in and saw, these guys, when they win, they like to show it off. They like to let people know. So, and at the end of the day, if it does come down to, yeah, he was just being a little humble, or he just need to be humbled a little bit. No, because you guys he's with you guys his whole career. He's been with you guys his entire career. So everything that he's learned when it's come to celebrating or anything, it's all, I think, comes back to they were doing the same thing, same exact thing.
Let's just get Draymond to LA already. We know that's where he wants to be. Just do it. I mean, I really don't think the Warriors fear the Lakers all that much. The Lakers are a 2-man team right now, and neither of those two guys were healthy last year, and they're just getting older as the days go on. I think the Warriors will send them to LA without any problems.
Yeah, and giving them another player who can't really shoot the ball, giving LeBron another player who can't shoot the ball, they won't have an issue with that. I mean, at all. But all right, we'll see if there's anything. We'll talk about anything if suspensions comes out or fines or whatever it is. If whatever happens with this situation, if the Warriors do anything, Draymond gets traded, we'll talk about it. But let's get into the next topic. We did get a little basketball going on with the G League Ignite and the Metropolitans 92, which featured 2 of the top prospects in this year's draft, Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson. Both players played amazing. I want to get your thoughts on the game, and more specifically those two, and just how much now the tanking season is in full effect.
I mean, you and me have known about Wembanyama for a long time. We knew he was this good. I will say he looks a lot more filled out. It looks like he's really been hitting, getting a lot of calories in there, lifting a lot of weights. He definitely looks bigger than he did a couple months ago. Nothing he did shocked me because we've seen him for a couple years now. Scoot Henderson is as advertised. When I was listening to podcasts about him, reading about him, the explosiveness, the twitch, finishing ability, playmaking. He reminds me of if you took John Wall, but then you gave him some of those, not the complete ability, but some of that ball handling that Kemba Walker had. Really quick. The legs move so quick. He really creates a lot of space on that pull-up jumper. That's where we're at right now in basketball. This is what we're telling John Morant to become, right? If you take that explosiveness and that ability and you were able to do some half-court stuff with it like Scoot Henderson can do, you can be an all-NBA first-team type player. I think both of these guys have that potential. Now, is Victor Wembanyama the greatest prospect of all time like people were talking about? I don't know about all that because we do have concerns about his body type. Right? When guys like Ben Simmons and LeBron and all those guys were coming out, we never had concerns of how's this body going to fare in the NBA. But if Victor Wembanyama continues to get bigger, I mean, he's a freak. He is already, teams got to be looking at this. Utah's got to be licking their lips. Now, of course, this is basketball, so there's a draft lottery. I would like Victor Wembanyama in a small market because foreign players tend to stay in small markets. And we don't have to have him, force a trade and sit out when he's 27 because they just don't seem to do that. I would like Scoot Henderson on the New York Knicks tomorrow.
I mean, I wouldn't even mind Wembayama in like a place like New York because I mean it would just be fun, man. It would be. I think Wembayama has the chance to be the. I mean, he already is getting those comparisons of being the most hyped prospect since LeBron almost. I mean, it's in reality. I mean, this guy's being talked about to be the. I mean, and rightfully so. I mean, he's what 7'2" or 3.
I think he's actually about. I think he's about 7'5".
Well, yeah, I saw a picture of him next to Rudy Gobert. He skied over Rudy Gobert. Like that's how tall this guy is. He can shoot threes. He can do everything. The only concern that people have, and I think it's understandable, but I think he'll be fine once he gets to the NBA, is he's got to lay off the fouling. You know, he's a little, but again, when you're that tall, you're going to be aggressive. You're going to be getting some fouls. That's just what happens. Tall guys get more fouls in the NBA because the smaller players just get the calls. That's how it works. But Wembanyama, yeah, he's going to be unbelievable. I mean, he could be what people thought the unicorn could have been. Porzingis, Porzingis was talked about. He could shoot threes. He was tall or everything, but he couldn't actually go in and get rebounds. He couldn't do anything. If Wembanyama continues this trend of getting bigger and getting more muscle on and getting more weight, and he could still shoot, he could still dribble and move the way he can and fly all over the court, he could easily be one of the best prospects in a long time. He could be just an absolute stud in this league. I think he will be a stud in this league. I think we both think that. But when it comes to Scoot, you know, I just there's something about, I think me and you both love these types of guards that play like this. It's just fun to watch. He's just one of those players. He's a fun player to watch. I think that he will be a great player in the NBA. Now, do I think one person will somehow hop in the conversation of being over these two guys? Somebody's going to. It happens every year. Somebody hops in. But either way, these two are, I think, locks for at least the top 3. I mean, Scoot, maybe he falls to 4 or 5, but there's no way they fall out of the top 5. And I think Wembanyama just solidified that he's going number 1 already, and we didn't even start the actual season this year. So, I mean, both these players, unbelievable. I'm excited to see them, their careers unfold, everything like that. But any last thoughts on Wembanyama and Henderson for you?
I just read that Beckham Jr. projected to add, in terms of value to whatever franchise he goes, $1 billion.
Hold on, I think either me or you is lagging real quick. Oh boy.
Can you hear me now?
Hold on, Matt, are you gonna hop on real quick just to tell me, because I don't know if it's me or Tim.
Yeah, I think Tim's kind of dying real quick. Either way, we'll just remove him for now, and then he can hop back in when he gets that figured out.
I mean, we only have one more topic after this.
Okay, well, if you want to get into that topic, or we can, I mean, might as well. We're already here, so let's get into it. I'll let you go for it, bub.
Yeah, I mean, Lakers extend Rob Pelinka all the way to 2026. Kind of a surprising move, I think. I mean, well, what do you think about this move? Obviously, the Lakers, they won a championship in 2020, but other than that, hasn't really been that great. What do you think about extending him?
I mean, obviously, I'm not your go-to guy for basketball knowledge, but if there's one thing I do know, they didn't bring LeBron in. There's no sense that, or there's no doubt in my mind that this guy would not have a job. Because, I mean, let's be real. At the end of the day, it's LeBron that was the GM in LA, bringing in certain players or, kind of just being okaying things that he would present to the team. I mean, it's LeBron's team right now. And until he's gone, right now, LeBron's going to be the GM. So for him to get extended, good for the individual. But for the overall fan base, I mean, I guess I can't be too mad because, I mean, you won a championship not too long ago, even though I think it's kind of one of those you got to put an asterisk next to because it didn't really count in my opinion. But, I mean, I'd be a little upset because we all know I think LeBron is on his way out of LA and will ultimately not finish his career as a Laker. I think they're kind of setting themselves to be screwed for the long term.
Yeah, I don't understand it. They don't have picks. I think their next pick is 2027. So his contract will be up by the time they have their next first round pick that's theirs. So it just doesn't make sense to me. I get that he brought a championship in 2022, but they only won because LeBron James and Anthony Davis were on that team. And neither of them can stay healthy. It's pretty tough to see guys like this get an extension when you know that there's guys in the league that deserve it more. Um, I mean, if he proves me wrong, if he proves us wrong, he will. But right now, there's not even much they can do when it comes to drafting or going out and getting another guy because they're paying most of their money to two guys already, and it's Anthony Davis and LeBron James. And LeBron, now you're starting to see him get older. You're starting to see that now he may be playing still at that high level, but you're seeing his body starting to give a little bit. And that's,
Yeah.
I don't
And
think that's a shock.
obviously, we all know that LeBron has never been traded. He's always, gone through his contract and then has moved on. Do you see with this extension and his type of characteristics, do you think he would be the guy to trade LeBron James? Or do you think he would be the guy to ultimately make good decisions to get rid of this super team to bring in a good young core? Do you think he's the guy that is going to be able to sustain a good upcoming future without LeBron James, Anthony Davis?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, because I don't see him maintaining that long future after them. I could see them like if they're really bad this year and it gets to that trade deadline, or even if it's the whole season, and they just are not looking good. There's a lot of bad contracts in the NBA. There's a lot of bad ones. He already brought in Russell Westbrook's horrible contract. And now you could go trade LeBron to a team that has a lot of picks because there's a lot of teams out there that would definitely give stuff up. New Orleans being the one that pops right in my head first, which would actually be very, very ironic because of the fact that they traded for Anthony Davis from New Orleans. But there's just not much that they can do. I mean, this roster this season does not look good. It really looks bad. I think a lot of people also are rooting for them to lose because of the fact that they gave up so much just to get Davis, LeBron, and get that one title. But I mean, he's got his work cut out for him. They must trust him. He must have said, "Hey, I got a plan for this whole thing," but I don't really know what your plan could be right now because you can't do much. But I do actually want to ask before we hop off, since this was the last topic. You said that the 2020 championship, you don't think it's like a little asterisk. Just want to hear the reasoning behind it, and I'll give mine, and then give two sides
I
of why
think
we think.
there is such, like, don't get me wrong. Obviously, LeBron James is a very clutch player and all, but I do think there is another set of emotions to deal with on the line, big games, at home court advantage, around fans, just be in that atmosphere, having to travel to different places. I think that is such a big part of playoffs, and that's really determines great champions. Is just how they handle everything outside of the game itself. And I think that is just such a huge part to the game. And, I look at a lot of outside of the NBA, I look at all those other championships that took place and were won. And I look and I go, guys, at the end of the day, I don't really think they all deserve to be titled a full champion. And I'm not 100% sure if I remember, but was there like a different type of play-in for the playoffs when that came around? Because I know the NHL, they had like 24 teams make the playoffs, and then they started to move on into the Stanley Cup Finals rather than it just being 8 teams from each conference. Everything was just so adjusted. Like Super Bowl too. I mean, having a little bit of fans there, still empty. Everybody's staying away from each other. I think it would just be kind of awkward to win an NBA championship and you look around and the only people celebrating are the training staff and coaches, and everybody else is like quiet and stay away from me. It's
Yeah.
I just yeah, obviously they were definitely one of the better teams. They were
Right.
definitely one of the better teams, but I think in a different normal setting, it could have been different. So that's why I don't really give the benefit of the
Actually,
doubt.
I do think that was the first year they did the play-in tournament,
Yes,
and then
that's
they just
right.
kept
That's
it
right.
because they were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, this actually works phenomenal. Like, this is
Did anybody
great."
get knocked off in the playing tournament that was like not expected to.
I honestly can't even remember. I think Portland might have knocked somebody out that I think the Warriors actually did.
Yeah.
I think the Warriors got knocked out in the play-in tournament. I could be wrong on that one, but I think they were one, and I think Portland knocked somebody out that wasn't supposed to be knocked out. But here's
And
what I'll say.
real quick, remind me, the Eastern Finals were
Heat Celtics.
Heat. I think that would have went differently.
And
I'm not,
as a Celtics fan, I'm gonna agree.
I'm not a Celtics fan at all. I'm not. I despise all Boston sports, and you well know that. But I think it would have went quite differently if it was.
Here's what I'll say. The last thing I'll say about it is I think the NBA was a little different than the other leagues because of the fact that they were in like such a small. It was literally like a practice facility, right?
Yeah.
Where like hockey, they still at least were in the arenas. That might have seemed weirder. But I will say this, that whole tournament, you saw guys just going off, like going nuclear with dropping points. Like they were shooting out of their minds, the whole league. So I actually think it might have been tougher to win that year because of the fact that every single player in the NBA was playing at their absolute best because there was no distractions. There was no anything. So I think it could have been harder to win. But yes, I do think the outcome could have been very
I could
different.
throw the argument easily though, and just be like, well, you didn't have distractions for some players to go through phases where they can't perform.
Yeah.
That's what I look in for ultimate champions. Is like, even if they understand that, hey, this team does really, really bad when they are on a groove in their home building, and then all of a sudden their fans go quiet because we do something big. To see them react, I think that's what's so great about sports is the fans and how they react when it comes to championship games because home or away, it's just such an impactful part of the game. And
Well, I will
like I
say,
said, I'm not dissing that they weren't the best team in the league. I just think it easily could have gone a different way.
oh yeah, that's why I do say like, yes, it's the hardest one to win, I think, but at the same time, it could have been because of the facts that you just said, it could have went completely different. So I get the asterisks, but I think it's asterisks as could have went different, but also kind of like somehow the hardest one to win. So it's back and forth. Like I get both sides, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, people to be able to hear
I
both
love it,
sides of
man.
saying it. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And, obviously, I think tip off's in what, like a week?
Tim said 8 days, I believe.
8
So
days? I mean, it's just around the corner. Obviously, I'm a Knicks fan, so that's not going too hot as it always is. But I'll watch a couple games here and there. But there's a reason you two guys do this segment, and you guys do a really good job at it. But yeah, I know Tim obviously wasn't able to come back here, but I'm happy that we got this episode done and over with. That's great. You got anything else basketball wise, buddy?
No, I don't think so. Obviously, we'll see if what happens with Draymond and all that. Opening day, a lot coming up. We'll be talking about a lot of basketball, me, Tim, and maybe Shane will hop on here and there for basketball. But
if the Knicks get good, I'll hop on, but I doubt it.
Yeah, hey, who knows? Who knows?
True that.
Every year.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. Ben, you want to say it?
As always, go Bills.
Go Bills. All right, we'll see you guys.